The morning I got the promotion, I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and cried. Not because I was sad, because I've been working toward that moment for 4 years, and the first thing I wanted to do was call my mom. And I already knew, somewhere deep in my chest, how that call was going to go. I called anyway. It rang 4 times. Voicemail. I texted her. Mom, I got the BP role. Starting next month. She responded 40 minutes later. That's nice, honey. Did you renew the car insurance on the account yet? That was it. That was the whole message. I put my phone face down on the table and finished my coffee alone. My name is Leah. I'm 31 years old. I'm a VP of operations at a logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for most of my adult life, I have been the financial spine of a family that never once asked how I was doing. Let me back up. My parents divorced when I was 12. My dad moved to Phoenix, remarried, started over. My mom stayed in the house in Greensboro, the house her parents had left her, with my younger brother Corey and my aunt Pamela, who moved in temporarily when I was 15 and never left. I was the oldest. I was the responsible one. That's what they always said, like it was a compliment. Like it wasn't just a way of saying, we're going to need a lot from you. I worked through college, graduated with a finance degree and no debt, which felt like a miracle at the time. Got my first real job at 23. Started sending money home at 24. Not because anyone sat me down and asked, because my mom called one Sunday crying about the heating bill, and I paid it. And then the next month there was something else. And the month after that, and before I knew it, helping out had turned into a standing arrangement that nobody ever named out loud. By the time I was 28, I was covering the property taxes on my grandmother's house, which my mom lived in. Rent-free, plus Corey's car insurance, plus Pamela's cell phone plan, which she'd put in my name because her credit was ruined from a situation she never fully explained. I also paid for my mom's dental work twice, covered Corey's security deposit when he moved into his first apartment, and co-signed on that lease because his income didn't look right on paper. I did all of this while living in a 1-bedroom apartment I'd furnished from Facebook Marketplace. Eating lunch at my desk most days, and telling myself this was what good daughters did. I didn't have a partner. I barely had a social life. I had a best friend named Iris who lived across town and who, every time I mentioned any of this, would look at me with an expression I can only describe as careful, like she was choosing her words so as not to scare me off from the truth she'd been trying to tell me for years. They're not going to change just because you give them more, she said once, over wine at her place. I told her she didn't understand the full picture. She nodded. She didn't push. That's what good friends do, I think. They say the thing once, clearly, and then they wait for you to be ready. The promotion came with a $22,000 raise and a relocation package to Charlotte. The company was consolidating operations there. My director called me personally to make the offer, which almost never happens. I was the youngest VP in my division by 6 years. I said yes immediately and then sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, shaking. The relocation was the part I hadn't thought through. I had a lease ending in 3 months anyway, so the timing worked. But the things I'd been paying for, those weren't going to relocate with me. Those were going to need a conversation. I decided to wait until I was settled. Give myself a month in Charlotte, get my feet under me, then have the talk with my mom. I had it all mapped out. I was going to be calm. Reasonable. I was going to explain that I needed to redirect my finances toward building my own stability. I had a whole script. I never got to use it. 3 weeks after I started the new role, I got a call from my bank. It was a fraud alert. Someone had attempted to add a new authorized user to one of my credit accounts. Not my checking, but an older card I barely used anymore. The bank had flagged it because the request came from an unfamiliar device and a different state. North Carolina. I was in North Carolina. The attempt had been made from a Greensboro IP address. I called the bank back, confirmed I hadn't made the request, and had the card locked while I figured out what was going on. The representative walked me through the attempt. Whoever had tried it had my full name, my date of birth, my social security number, and the card number. They had all of it. There are only a few places that information could have come from. I didn't want to believe it. I genuinely did not want to believe it. I sat in my new apartment with boxes still half unpacked around me, and I went through every other possible explanation I could think of. Data breach, old documents somewhere, anything. But I knew Corey had been in my mom's house. I knew my mom kept a folder of family paperwork in the kitchen drawer, a habit left over from when my dad used to handle finances, and she'd needed easy access to everything. I had made the mistake years ago of updating that folder with my new card information when I was helping her understand why a charge had gone through wrong. I hadn't taken it back out. I called my mom. "Hey, have you seen Corey lately?" "He was here last weekend," she said. "Why? Has he been going through any paperwork around the house?" A pause. "Leah, what is this about?" "Someone tried to add themselves to my credit account. From a Greensboro address." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'm sure it's just some mix-up," she said. "Mom, it had my social security number." Silence. "I'm sure Corey wouldn't. I need you to ask him." She said she would. She didn't call back that day. Or the next day. I texted her on the third day and she said she'd talked to him and he didn't know anything about it. Her exact words, "He doesn't know anything about it." That sentence told me everything because that's not the same as he didn't do it. I called Corey directly. He let it go to voicemail. I left a message. I said, "I know what happened. I'm not going to pretend I don't. I'm not filing anything right now, but I need you to call me back so we can talk about this." He texted me 2 days later. It said, "I was just trying to build my credit. I figured you wouldn't notice." I stared at that text for a long time. I figured you wouldn't notice. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I made a terrible mistake." Not even a real explanation, just, "I thought you were distracted enough that I could help myself to your financial identity and you'd miss it." That was the moment something changed in me. Not exploded. Not broke. Changed. Like a thermostat quietly clicking off. I screenshot the text and sent it to my email. Then I called my bank again and started the process of locking everything down, my credit with all 3 bureaus, the account Corey had touched, and the card my mom's cell plan was charged to. And then I called Iris. "Say it," I told her. "I'm not going to say I told you so. I know you're not. But say the other thing." She was quiet for a second. "You already know what you have to do." I gave myself 2 weeks before I made any moves. Not because I was hesitating. Because I'd learned, over years of managing operations under pressure, that the worst decisions come from acting while you're still in the hot part of the feeling. I let the hot part pass. I made a list. I was methodical. The first thing I did was contact an attorney who specialized in identity theft. A brief consultation, just to understand my options. She confirmed that what Corey had done constituted attempted fraud and that I had every legal right to file a report. She also confirmed that the screenshot was usable. I told her I'd be in touch. Then I looked at every financial thread connecting me to my family. The cell phone plan in my name. 3 lines. My mom, Pamela, Corey. The car insurance I'd been paying on Corey's policy, $187 a month. The property tax I'd been covering for my grandmother's house, $2,400 a year, paid in 2 installments. The informal transfer I sent my mom every month, $400, which we never discussed openly but which she clearly budgeted around, because whenever I was even a few days late, she'd find a reason to call. I totaled it up for the first time, all at once, with a spreadsheet. Since I was 24. 7 years. I won't say the exact number because it's not the point, and honestly, it still makes my stomach hurt. But it was enough to have paid off a car. A nice car. Several times over. I made another list. Not of what I was owed. I knew I'd never see that. But of what I was going to stop. The cell plan was the first to go. I removed all 3 lines from my account and called to confirm they'd be cut off at the end of the billing cycle. I texted my mom separately to let her know they'd need to set up their own accounts. I was not unkind. I was factual. The lines will be ending on the 15th. You'll want to transfer your number if you want to keep it. Here's how to do that. She called me within the hour. "What is going on with you?" she said. She didn't sound hurt. She sounded inconvenienced. "I'm restructuring my finances," I said. I should have done it a while ago. Leah, Pamela uses that phone for her doctor's appointments. Pamela is 53 years old, I said. She can open her own phone account. My mom shifted to Corey, said he'd made a mistake but he was young and I was being too hard on him. He stole my identity, Mom. He was trying to build his credit by using my social security number without my permission. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. Quiet. I hope you're not going to do something dramatic, she said. I thought about that word. Dramatic. I'd heard it my whole life whenever I expressed a need that was inconvenient for someone else. Failed a grade school friendship and cried too long. Dramatic. Had a panic attack before a college exam and had to call her dramatic. Expressed any want, need, or boundary that required something from her. Dramatic. I'm not going to do anything dramatic, I said. I'm going to take care of myself. That's all. The property tax bill was due in 6 weeks. I didn't pay it. I had never been listed on that property. It was my grandmother's household to my mom, so I had no legal obligation. I'd just been paying because nobody else was, and the house would have gone into arrears. This time, I let it be their problem. I also stopped the monthly transfer. I didn't announce it, I just didn't send it. The first month, my mom texted on the 5th. Did you send the money yet? I said, I'm not going to be doing that going forward. I need to focus on my own savings. She didn't respond for 2 days. Then, I guess we know where we stand. I didn't reply to that. The car insurance I canceled with 30 days notice per the policy terms. I mailed Corey a letter, physical, certified, return receipt informing him that the policy would end on a specific date and that he was responsible for obtaining his own coverage. I kept a copy of the letter and the tracking confirmation. My attorney friend said, "You're being very clean about this." I said, "I watch too many people get messy about things like this and lose." She smiled. Smart. I didn't hear from Corey directly for a while, not until about 6 weeks after I'd started closing everything down. Then I got a text. It said, "You're really going to let this affect the whole family over one mistake?" I read it twice. Then I replied, "You have the text you sent me. You know what you did. I hope you get the help you need." He sent 3 more messages after that. I didn't open them. I didn't block him because I wanted to be able to see if anything legal came through that I needed to respond to, but I didn't read them. My mom tried once more, a few weeks later. She called on a Sunday morning, the time she always used to call when she wanted to have a real conversation, which told me she'd thought about the timing. I answered. "I just want to understand what happened to you," she said. "You've changed." I thought about that for a second. I got promoted, I said. I moved to a new city. I started building something of my own. None of that is a change in who I am. It's just, I stopped making myself smaller so everyone else could stay comfortable. Nobody asked you to make yourself small. You didn't have to ask, I said. That's kind of the point. She started crying. Not the kind of crying that's grief. The kind that's pressure. I recognized the difference because I'd learned it over 31 years. I kept my voice even. "Mom, I love you. I'm not disappearing, but I can't keep running a one-sided arrangement and call it a family. That's not fair to either of us." She said I'd regret this. I told her I hoped she was right, because that would mean I'd eventually feel the pull to go back, and I didn't want to feel nothing. Feeling nothing was the thing I was more afraid of. The part of this that nobody prepares you for is how quiet it gets. There's the anger phase, which is loud and clarifying. And then the anger cools and what's underneath it is just space. A lot of it. Saturday afternoons that used to get eaten up by phone calls and errands and being the person everyone called when something needed to be figured out. Those afternoons were mine now. I didn't always know what to do with them. I started running. Nothing serious. Just 30 minutes in the morning before work along a greenway near my apartment that cuts through a park. There are regulars out there. A man with 2 identical beagles who always nods. A woman my age who runs in a full-length reflective jacket regardless of the weather. I don't know their names. I just see them every morning and there is something quietly companionable about that. Iris came to visit in the fall. She stayed for a long weekend and we walked around the South End and ate at restaurants I'd been meaning to try and talked the way we hadn't talked in years. Not about family logistics, not about what I needed to handle or who needed what from me. Just about things. Books and her new job and a trip she was planning to Portugal. I realized midway through that dinner on the first night that I couldn't remember the last time I'd sat somewhere nice and just been. Without my phone in my hand. Without the low-grade hum of obligation in the background. I paid the check. She didn't argue. That was new too. Spending money on something that was just for me. For a moment that was just mine. You seem different, Arya said. Yeah? In a good way. She paused. In a you way. Like the you that was always under the other stuff. I didn't say anything. I just looked at the table for a second and then looked up. I think I was so scared of being like my dad, I said. Of just leaving, checking out, not showing up. So I overcorrected. I showed up so much I disappeared. Iris nodded slowly. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what showing up for myself looks like. I got a letter from my mom's house about 2 months after the property tax deadline passed. She'd worked something out with the county. A payment plan, I assumed. I didn't know the details. It wasn't my information to have. What I did know was that the situation had resolved without me. Which meant it had always been capable of resolving without me. Which meant all those years of quietly absorbing the weight of it had been, in part, a choice I'd made because no one had ever been required to find another way. That realization wasn't angry. It was just clean. Like something finally making sense. I'm not going to tell you I've perfectly arrived somewhere. I still think about calling my mom on Sundays. I still sometimes pick up my phone and then put it back down. There's grief in it. Not for what I lost, exactly, but for the version of this I'd always wanted it to be. The family that shows up. The mom who hears good news and leads with love. That's the thing you mourn, I think. Not the people themselves, but the relationship you kept hoping they'd become. My grandmother. My mom's mom, the one who left the house, had a saying she'd use whenever I was trying to force something that wasn't working. She'd look at me over whatever she was doing and say, "You can't pour from a jar that's empty, Leah." I used to think she meant rest, take care of yourself so you can take care of others. I think now she just meant you can't. Some things are genuinely empty, and no amount of pouring is going to change that. It's been 8 months since I stopped. 8 months of building my own savings account that actually grows. 8 months of weekends that belong to me. 8 months of sleeping without that low hum of what's next, what's needed, who's gonna call. Corey never did come back and apologize. I didn't expect him to. The attorney consultation stayed a consultation. I made a decision not to file, not because what he did was okay, but because I didn't want to spend any more of my energy on it. I still have the screenshot. 10. Return receipt. If anything changes, I'm covered. My mom and I have spoken a handful of times. It's cordial. It's careful. It's not what I wanted, but it might be what's true. I'm learning to let those two things exist at the same time. Iris and I are planning Portugal together for next spring. First real trip I'll have taken in almost 4 years. I got a passport renewal in the mail last week and I put it on my refrigerator with a magnet, like a normal person who goes places. It sounds like nothing. It felt like everything. There's this moment on the greenway some mornings, usually when the light is low and orange and the Beagle Man hasn't passed yet and the park is almost empty, where I run and I feel the specific quality of not owing anyone anything in that moment. Not one single person. Everything I am right now belongs to me. I don't know how to explain how long it took to feel that. I don't know how to explain how much I used to think that feeling was selfish. It's not selfish, I know that now. It's just what it feels like to finally be inside your own life. And if you're reading this and you recognize something in it, if there's a drawer in someone else's kitchen with your information in it, if there's a monthly transfer that was never supposed to be permanent, if there are people who love what you provide more than they love who you are, then I hope you get your quiet greenway morning too. I hope you get there. I've thought a lot about what made me stay in that arrangement for so long. 7 years. And the honest answer? the one I didn't want to look at for a while, is that I chose it. Not because I was weak, not because I didn't see what was happening, but because somewhere along the way I had decided that being needed was the same thing as being loved. That keeping people afloat was how I proved I deserved to be in their lives. That is a belief that will quietly drain everything you have if you let it, and it doesn't announce itself. It just shows up as a monthly transfer, as a phone plan in your name, as a drawer in someone's kitchen with your most sensitive information sitting in it, unguarded, because you handed it over freely and never thought to ask for it back. What Corey did was wrong. That's not complicated. Using someone's social security number without their knowledge is a crime regardless of the reason, regardless of the relationship, regardless of how young you are or how tight your credit is. I want to be clear about that because I think sometimes when families are involved, we soften the language around things that deserve to be called what they are. He made a calculated decision that my inattention was worth betting on. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. That choice was only possible because of the environment I had allowed to exist. Not caused, allowed. There's a difference. I didn't create Corey's character. I didn't make my mom emotionally unavailable or make Pamela comfortable enough to stay for 16 years on someone else's bill. But I kept the conditions stable. I kept absorbing the costs so no one ever had to reckon with consequences. And when you remove consequences from a system long enough, you don't get gratitude. You get escalation. That's just how it works. Leah, the version of me at 24 who started sending those first payments home, meant well. She genuinely did. And meaning well is not nothing. But good intentions applied without wisdom become a form of enabling, and enabling is not the same as love even when it feels like it. Real care sometimes looks like stepping back and letting people carry what's theirs to carry. I didn't understand that for a long time. I thought stepping back meant abandoning people. What I know now is that the only thing I was abandoning by stepping back was a story about myself that wasn't true. The story that said my value to this family was financial, and that without it, I had none. Iris saw it before I did. My grandmother said it in her way before I had the words for it. The green way exists now because I finally listened. You can be a good person and still stop. You can love someone and still say, "Not like this, not anymore." Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, I think that combination, the willingness to hold both at once, is one of the harder and more necessary things a person can learn to do. It requires honesty about what's real, discipline in the face of guilt, and the kind of quiet courage that doesn't look impressive from the outside but costs everything on the inside. I'm still learning, but I know which direction I'm walking now, and it's mine.